Scale modeling is one of the best hobbies in the world, but getting started can be frustrating because there is a lot to learn, from kits, tools, and products. So if you've been thinking about getting started in scale modeling, or if you're still in the beginner's phase, this series of videos is for you. Hi everyone, I'm Rod. This is Red Leaf Scale Modeling, and in this series of videos we're going to look at the fundamentals of scale modeling, how to get started. We're going to look at how to choose a good starting kit, how to plan your build, and then go through the fundamentals of how to prepare the parts, assemble, paint, and weather. Now, it's important to understand that the entire process was done from the perspective of a beginner, meaning we've applied the fundamentals of scale modeling, but using the most basic tools and products that may be all that a beginner actually has. The goal is that once you understand these fundamentals and you employ them, you'll be able to produce a beautiful looking model on your very first attempt. So with that, let's get started. Hi everyone, and welcome to the Beginner's Guide to Scale Modeling, where I do my very best to answer one simple question. How do you build scale models? So here goes. A scale model is a project in a box. There's a lot of parts that all need to be cleaned up, painted, and assembled in order to produce a finished model. And there is a process to this. Now, I've broken the process into 6 broad categories, starting with preparation, if this is in fact your very first project. After that, we break it down into planning, assembly, painting, the application of markings, in this case water slide decals, and weathering. Now, don't panic because everything here is beginner friendly. Now, when we break those categories down even further, we get the fundamentals of scale modeling. And it's these fundamentals that allow us to get the best fit and finish on our models as efficiently as possible. So the purpose of this video is twofold. First, it's to shorten your learning curve by introducing you to the fundamentals of scale modeling. But second is for you to prove to yourself that you can achieve amazing results on your very first project simply by applying the fundamentals of scale modeling. Now, to demonstrate this, we're going to build Tamiya's P51D, kit number 61040. The molds were cut in 1995, but for a 30-year-old kit, it builds into a beautiful looking little model. Now, the takeaway at this point is that this model was built from the perspective of a beginner, meaning we use the fundamentals of scale modeling using the most basic tools and products. Now, to qualify that, more than 95% of the cleanup of the parts, either before or after they were assembled, was achieved using a hobby knife with a number 11 blade and some sanding sticks. The natural metal finish on the airframe was painted with Tamiya Spray Can. All of the painting, including the blue on the nose, was picked out using Tamiya's Basic Brush Set. That's a 3-brush set that sells for less than $7 Canadian, so they are very inexpensive brushes. Tamiya panel liners were used to weather the airframe, and the weathering on the tires is Tamiya's enamel paint, specifically buff. This is an example of scale modeling 101, which is also why I firmly believe that this result, or better, is absolutely achievable by a beginner. So to answer the question, how do we build scale models? First, understand the fundamentals. Second, use those fundamentals. Third, add some patience. Fourth, add a touch of finesse. And 5, practice. Having said that, let's go to part 1, preparation, where we take a look at the kits, tools, and products that you might want to consider to start your very first project. Choosing your first model kit may be a lot easier than you think. As a beginner, it makes sense to choose a high-quality kit that's designed for beginners. The Tamiya Plastic Model Company has been making high-quality kits for beginners for more than 60 years. The quality of the parts, fit, finish, and ease of assembly has earned them a reputation in the industry known as the Tamiya Standard. So it makes a lot of sense to choose your first kit from the Tamiya brand, because any kit you choose is going to make it easy for you to build a beautiful looking model. Now, your first project should be a lot of fun. So you want to choose a subject that's easy to build and easy to paint. We've already determined that the brand goes a long way in helping us with ease of assembly, but what about being easy to paint? Ease of painting depends on what you want to paint and how you plan to paint it. And how we plan to paint is with spray cans. Spray cans give you better coverage over large areas and in far less time than is possible with a brush. And even a beginner can lay down a professional looking coat of paint with a spray can with very little practice. So we want to choose a subject that's going to be easy to paint with a spray can. That means we want to find a subject that is mechanically clean, with a very simple paint and marking scheme. Now, when you try to pick your subject, you want to look at something that interests you, whether it's civilian, military, or sci-fi, on land, on sea, or in the air. Now, for this demonstration, we've chosen a military airplane. The kit chosen specifically is Tamiya's 1/48 scale P51D, kit number 61040. In my opinion, this kit hits a sweet spot. It's got that just right combination of size, level of detail, cost, ease of assembly, and ease of painting. Now, with a wingspan of just 9¼ inches, we can build this model anywhere. A kitchen table, a coffee table, or at a desk. And once it's built, it'll fit easily on any shelf. So the size of this model is excellent. Now, in terms of the level of detail, all of the parts on the Tamiya kit are crisply molded and come with a very satisfying level of refined detail. With a cost of just $32.95 as of January 2025, the price point is fantastic. In terms of ease of assembly, with only 55 parts that fit very precisely and excellent Tamiya instructions, the kit almost falls together, so it is very easy to assemble. And finally, for ease of painting, this airplane is very easy to paint. The entire fuselage can be painted in a natural metal finish. Without the 2 drop tanks, it's very easy to paint with a spray can. All that remains is to mask and brush paint the nose in the blue. This kit, in my opinion, is a great place to start for anyone wanting to try their hand at scale modeling. This kit gives you everything you need and nothing you don't. But this is just a suggestion. In the end, whatever kit you choose, you should find it easy to assemble and easy to paint. Now let's take a look at the essential tools and supplies that we're going to need to build and paint our model. Now, our first consideration is going to be safety. We already know that we want to use spray cans to paint the model, which means we're going to be producing some pretty nasty gases. So if you can paint outside and the weather is good, that is ideal. If you're painting in the garage and you don't have perfect cross ventilation, you want to get a half-face respirator with some NIOSH P100 filters, which are designed to filter gases. But if you already have a workbench and you want the convenience of painting in the house, a spray booth of some kind is a must-have. The fumes need to go outside and you need to breathe fresh air. Now, we're going to try and take a logical approach to the tools and present them in the order that we're actually going to use them. And the first thing we're going to need to do is remove the parts from the sprue. So for that, we need a good sprue cutter. And this is Tamiya's Sharp Point Side Cutter, item number 74123. And the feature is this beautiful sharp tip, which allows you to remove even the most delicate parts for your model. And once the parts are removed from the sprue, we need to pare away the gate material that we left. So we need a knife. For all the larger gate remnants, this standard utility knife is the go-to. The reason is because all we need to expose is a 1/4 inch of the honed edge of the blade, and then we can get our fingers up extremely close, which gives us very, very precise control of the blade when we're removing those large pieces. But when we get to smaller, more delicate parts or tight spaces, a hobby knife with a number 11 blade is the go-to. Now, once we have the gate material pretty much pared away, a 6-inch flat mill file is the best tool for removing mold seams, gate material, or preparing the edge of a joint on a cylindrical surface. A good set of jeweler's files really is essential. There's nothing better for cleaning up super tight spots, like say the landing gear on an airplane. Now, we are going to clean up our panel lines or enhance details that are already on the model. Pins work extremely well for opening up panel lines on flat surfaces, whereas the razor saw is extremely well suited to opening up panel lines on any radiused edge. It's good to have a variety of abrasives, everything from sanding sticks, from coarse to fine. We've got Tamiya sanding sponges with this set of self-closing tweezers, and you can see that we cut a tiny little swatch of the foam pad and then hold it by the foam, and this becomes an extremely handy tiny little sanding tool. Micro mesh sanding pads in various grits, which are excellent for any kind of compound surface. Here at the bottom we have Alpha Abrasives sanding pads, again from 3200 to 12,000 grit. These are fantastic little polishing pads, especially when we do a final cleanup and we're getting ready for paint. Now, we are going to need to fill some joints, hopefully not many if we do things properly, but we do have Tamiya's Basic Putty, the white, and we have Tamiya 2-part epoxy putty, and we'll demonstrate how these are used later in the video. Tamiya's extra thin cement to assemble the parts. We've got some 99% isopropyl alcohol. So before we paint the model, we actually want to clean it. Now, drill bits are essential tools because we're always going to be drilling something out. These micro drill bit sets, which are actually designed for cutting circuit boards, are not very expensive, but these bits cut better than any other micro bits I have ever purchased. So these are strongly recommended. Just go to Amazon and put in micro drill bits and you will find these. We're spray painting, so we need to mask the canopy. We're using Tamiya masking tape. We've got 1mm and 2mm strips in these little carriers, and then we've got the 6mm and the 10mm in their own little dispensers. Now when we go to mask the engine cowl for the blue nose, we're going to use a circle cutter, some 40mm yellow masking tape, and we're also going to use the circle template to give us some sort of an idea what kind of radius we're looking at for that sweep as it turns and drops down below the chin of the aircraft. Some standard masking tape, which we're going to use to mount a lot of our parts for painting, and we've also got some Yoo-hoo tack. It helps us hold certain parts, but it's so good for so many things. This never leaves the bench. So this is Tamiya's beginner set. Other than the spray painting, all the details on the model, including the nose, you can see remnants of the blue paint in here yet, but this model was painted with these brushes. Now the first set of paints we're going to look at are the Tamiya acrylics. And let's call it Tamiya's acrylic system, because we're using the acrylic paints and we're using their X20A acrylic thinner. Now these paints are used throughout the model, from the interior of the cockpit to the clear colors that are used for the lights. As mentioned, we're going to use the spray can. We're going to use AS12 bare metal silver for the natural metal finish on the airframe, and we're going to use the semi-gloss clear, the TS79, to protect the paint and to prepare for the decal application. Mr. Mark Setter to apply the decals, and we're going to use Tamiya's enamel system with some earth tones for some of the weathering on the landing gear. And then to finish everything up, we're going to use panel line colors, primarily the dark gray and the dark brown, to give us that finishing touch. Now that we have a kit and some tools and products to build it with, the first thing we need to do before anything else is to make sure we have all the parts in the box, including the instructions. Take a look at all the parts, make sure that everything is there and that everything is fully formed and there's no significant damage to anything. If there is an issue, now's the time to take some pictures, put together a polite email, and let the manufacturer know of the issues. In my experience, they rectify the situation immediately. Now that we know we have everything that we need, we're going to go through the instructions and create our own plan to build our model as efficiently as possible. As human beings, everything we do is a process. Brushing our teeth, going on vacation, or building the world's largest ship. But if we can't explain what we're doing as a process, we really don't know what we're doing. And we run the risk of not just being inefficient, but also of making costly mistakes that could have been avoided. Hence the need for planning. An effective plan identifies all the tasks that need to be completed for a particular process, then prioritizes and sequences them so we do the right things at the right times. Proper sequencing improves efficiency, eliminates mistakes, and reduces waste. A scale model is a project in a box. A large number of parts, all of which need to be assembled and painted, and a set of instructions that guide us through the overall assembly of the model by indicating the layout, orientation, and connection of the parts according to a logical assembly sequence. But the instructions are not a plan. So what's the difference between a set of instructions and a plan? The instructions are drawings that prioritize the assembly of the model. They address the questions of what and where. For instance, what part goes where on the model. The entire process tends to be linear, with each successive step building on the one before it, literally. Subassemblies and paint callouts may be included, but again, where they make the most sense for the assembly of the model. On the other hand, an action plan, or project execution plan, addresses the questions of how and when certain tasks will be completed. It's all about timing, prioritizing and sequencing tasks so that our overall process can be as efficient as possible. So now let's study the instructions, put these concepts into practice, and create an efficient strategy for our project. Now the first thing we want to do is figure out exactly what we want our model to look like in terms of color, markings, and configuration. These are the colors that we want, but this is the configuration of the airplane that we want right here. These are the exact details that we want in our model. We want the landing gear extended, main gear doors open, drop tanks installed, flaps down, the rear radiator shutter open, the cockpit closed, but no pilot in the cockpit. Now let's take a look at the instructions and put together a plan for our project. The takeaway from this segment is that the modeler is in complete control of the assembly and painting process, and we want to be as efficient as possible. One way to do that is by building sub-assemblies, breaking down the model into smaller, more manageable parts that fit together like building blocks. Another is to organize the parts according to paint color and the obvious efficiency that that creates. But if we sequence the sub-assemblies and the painting properly, we get the best of both and a very efficient process. So when we study the instructions, those are the opportunities we'll be looking for. Take your time with the instructions. It doesn't hurt to take a few moments to study the photo of the completed model and read the write-up. Tamiya has always included a few short paragraphs with some historical and technical information about the real machines being modeled, and several of the other manufacturers are doing the same. But whether we do that or not, the first thing to look for is the version we want to build within the instructions. And there are a couple of reasons for that. First, we see the paint colors that we're going to need for the model. We see the blue for the nose, and we've got the TS17 gloss aluminum spray can for the airframe. Buy just what you need and nothing you don't. It'll cut your painting cost in half. And second, different versions of the model sometimes require different parts or modifications, and these will be called out in the notes within the instructions. So it's important to know which version we plan to build. Now when we study the instructions, it's important to know what we're getting and what we're looking for. Remember, we want to find opportunities to build sub-assemblies like this. We want to look for ways that we can organize by paint color like this. And we also want to look for the right times within our build to actually paint the airframe, which appears to be here. Now when we go through the instructions, what do we see? We've got some basic safety instruction here. We get some basic tools here, and we get the paint list. Again, we're only buying half of these paints, so it saves us a lot of money. When we look at the logic in the instructions, we start with the cockpit sub-assembly. We put the cockpit sub-assembly into the fuselage, complete the fuselage, start with the bottom of the wing, complete the wings, and then add the detail parts. The landing gear, the propeller, the canopy, the antenna, the gun sight. So what does this give us? The instructions give us a logical sequence for the assembly of the model, but they're not necessarily taking into consideration the painting efficiency. So what do we want to do? We want to find sub-assemblies, and we know that the fuselage is one, and we may be able to do the wings as another. We want to try and organize by paint color, so we have to go through the instructions, study each step, look at the different colors associated, and then try and find out how we can be more efficient with our painting. And the third thing we were looking for is the most logical time within the build to paint the airframe. And it appears to be right here, basically at the end of step 5, when the airframe is complete. Now that we know that, we can come up with our own plan. And it's very helpful to mark your drawing, pretty much like this. Again, the modeler is in control of the assembly and the painting process. Mark up your drawings any way that you like that helps you get organized and remember what you need to do. Now, the first thing we wanted to find was our sub-assemblies. And again, that would be the fuselage and the wings. The second thing we were looking for was an opportunity to be more efficient with our painting process. Now, the color that we've chosen to demonstrate this is the XF16 here, the flat aluminum. And we see we get it first in step 1 with the radiator, a single piece in step 2, which is the oil cooler. Remember, this relationship has to stay. We need to paint this piece first, and then we need to paint the oil cooler before we can put the fuselage together. But now when we look forward in the instructions, and this is the part about studying, look through the instructions, we see way back at the end of the build with these detail parts for our landing gear, the flat aluminum comes up a lot. Now, to be efficient with our painting, it makes more sense to group a bunch of small parts together and paint them at the same time. So what we're going to do is we're going to take a lot of these detail parts, get them prepped and ready to go, and then we're going to move that to the front before we even start building the cockpit. So when we paint the parts for the cockpit sub-assembly, which is one of the first things we're going to need to do to build the airplane, we're also going to be prepping the landing gear, which is going to come in towards the end of the build. So there's one efficiency. Now, the other thing we can do is sequence the sub-assemblies so that we can take advantage of the same kind of color sequencing. And that happens right here with the wings. There are 4 pieces required to build the main gear bays in the wings. The lower wing, the main gear bay itself, and the 2 upper halves of the wings. So it's probably more economical to paint all 4 pieces while they're together here in the wheel wells than to paint the 4 parts separately. Because we know that we can put this sub-assembly together and the fit is perfect on the fuselage, we are going to build the wing sub-assembly, and we're going to be able to paint the wheel wells within the same painting sequence as the internals of the fuselage and the cockpit. So there's another efficiency there. Now, the other thing we're looking for is when to paint the fuselage. And we've already identified the fact that when we put these 2 sub-assemblies here together, we end up with our airframe complete at this point. As soon as the airframe is complete, we can paint and we can put all the markings on it. After that, everything is just adding the detail components. So this is what our new execution strategy looks like. We're going to start with our wings. We're going to do all our detail painting. We're going to put the cockpit and the fuselage together. We're going to complete the airframe. Then we're going to do the paint and the markings. And finally, we're going to add our detail parts. And now that we have a plan, let's get started. I hope you liked the video. Please like, subscribe, and leave a comment, especially if there's something you want more clarification on. I want to know what you want to know, because that's what fuels this channel. Thank you so much.